Welcome, good morning, afternoon and evening. Today is Thursday, and after a few days of not too many infos related to 9.1.5 coming out, we have now something more. This something more is what spawned the idea behind this video, because amongst a few other news like Mage Tower Challenge hitting the PTR soon, so we are closer to 9.1.5 now, likely by the end of October or the very first week of November should be the release date, so that's kind of interesting. But the more important part is the news that now there is going to be another title added to Mythic Plus. This title is going to be the Tormented Hero title, which is going to be awarded to players reaching the 0.1% rating in Mythic Plus, importantly, for each faction. So this means that you take all of the players who went into Mythic Plus and got any rating, and then you take the 0.1% on each faction and you give them this title. This means, in short, that as usual, just like it happens for the Hall of Fame titles for raiding, for example, it's gonna take a little bit more of a competitive fight for Horde players to gain this title as opposed to Alliance. If we had to go by the numbers right now, Horde players would have to be in the range of plus 25 keys to get this, whereas Alliance players might get away with clearing plus 21s, for example. That's a pretty substantial difference. But then again, perhaps the Alliance also has the extra added difficult part of actually finding the players consistently to be able to find groups and push groups to high keys. That is a pretty big handicap right now for Alliance in PvE. What this bit of news spawned is the idea behind enticing, pushing, encouraging players in consuming your content, because very often players are going to be doing a certain activity, and more often than not they are going to have an extra incentive if there is a reward at the end of it. A lot of time you hear this type of rebuke, which is, well, if you enjoy the content, why do you need a reward at the end of it? If you like it, you just do it because you enjoy it. You don't need to be given a GIF wrapped box at the end of it. That's the general answer. And sometimes people try to spend effort and energy trying to find a reasonable counter to this, when the reality is that it shouldn't even matter. The reality is the answer should be, why not? The answer should be, what is wrong in giving you a reward at the end of an activity if it gets you to play more? Where's the issue? What's wrong with it? Which is what I thought when I saw this title. This title is cool and it's deserved that finally top Mythic Plus players gain something, because ever since Mythic Plus was released, the reward cap of Mythic Plus had been for years Keystone Master. So you reach the max key, sometimes it was a plus 10 level, sometimes it was a plus 15, but that was it. After that, there was nothing. After that, there was the classic, oh, it's been a couple of months, I don't need any more gear from Mythic Plus, I already got my Keystone Master, what's the point? That was generally, the idea behind people getting bored and tired over the weeks towards the end of a patch for Mythic Plus. So while I think this title is great because the top players deserve this type of recognition, I still think it's useless and pointless in the grand scheme of getting people to play more. This title is going for someone who is clearing plus 25. It took that someone hundreds of keys with a dedicated group in voice comms every day, every few days, whenever there is a push week. So this person is already very into Mythic Plus. He clearly did not need any extra incentive to push Mythic Plus. These groups, the groups that will get this title, would have continued pushing those keys anyways. They are the very small subset of the player base in Mythic Plus that does not need a reward other than the competition essentially in the ladder, the competition in the rating of Mythic Plus, in some cases maybe even into MDI and other competitive tournaments. So while the title is cool because they deserve a reward, it doesn't actually do anything for getting people who lacked incentive and lacked extra enthusiasm, a little bit of a push to give them a reason to do the content, because they already had that push naturally. What I am missing from the game is more incentives to do content in the form of rewards, because as pointed out, between getting Keystone Master at plus 15 and getting a title at plus 25, there is a pretty big gulf in between. Yes, Blizzard added portals. Now if you complete a plus 20 you can get a portal to the dungeon, but that is very minor. It is no title, it is no mount, and it is no transmog set, so it's worthless, essentially. There is this term which is used more often than not in ARPGs. Path of Exile coined a different version of it, which is chase item. So essentially giving the player something to chase, a type of effort in the content you consume that has some level of deterministic reward. So you know that by the end of your efforts, you will be getting what you have been chasing. Maybe you don't know exactly for sure when. Maybe it's not like you have a bar that starts at 0% and caps at 100, and once it reaches 100, you get your reward. Maybe it's going to take varying amount of time, but eventually you will get it. This is what I believe is missing way too often in way too many activities in World of Warcraft, because we just looked at Mythic Plus and we said 15 keys, now it's rating, but more or less it's still 15 keys, is Keystone Master. At plus 20 you can get some portals, and now at plus 25 and over you can get a title. The question is, why isn't there a title for plus 15? Why isn't there a title, a mount, and a transmog set for plus 18s, plus 20s, 22s, 24s? What about different classes? Why don't we have subsets of these Mythic Plus titles and rewards in general that are limited to single classes? Why don't we have class-specific titles for completing all keys in all dungeons at plus 18 or higher, whatever rating, 2300 rating or something? Wouldn't this give you more incentive to push and play multiple characters? If you were a main, let's just say a warrior, you normally did your Keystone Master, you normally did your raiding and whatnot, and now you're starting to get bored. Wouldn't you, with the knowledge that you have cleared only 16s and 17s, wouldn't you, with the knowledge that if you were able to clear all keys at plus 18, you would be getting a full transmog set themed for warrior, perhaps a title as well? And once you reach all the 18s, wouldn't you, knowing that if you cleared all the plus 20s, you will get an extra title, an extra mount, maybe a pretty good cosmetic toy for appearance transformation or something similar, maybe a special weapon effect, for example? Wouldn't this continue to entice you to play the game? Or perhaps not even on your main. Perhaps you think that as a player you can try to push plus 18s, but you don't think you will make it in plus 20s. Maybe it's you, maybe it's the spec, the niche hipster spec you're playing. Wouldn't you still have more incentives on dropping your main, starting to play your alt, because you know that even though you got those rewards on your warrior, the druid is going to get a different set of rewards for doing those activities. Those things would be the equivalent of a chase item. In this case it would be essentially a chase reward, something that it gets you to play the game, which doesn't seem too bad of an idea if you were a developer of a game trying to make sure that people get invested and stay invested into your product. And this goes for every type of content. I made the example of the raid and I made the example of Mythic Plus, but to be sure, the most important part of the game, I know it might seem weird, but the most important part of the game is the open world. That is what is going to keep players playing the game. People who are very into the raid and people who are very into Mythic Plus are much more likely to continue playing. They are much less likely to drop the game because they are not given rewards. The real issue is the open world, is when there isn't really much to do that is, at the very least, a slightly bit engaging in the open world. That is what you can do by filling with extra rewards, or more deterministic, easy to obtain, and that can progress your character, which is not something Blizzard is really doing recently, and by recently I mean the last expansions. They lazily sat their ass on a repeated, essentially, reward, which was the Azerite / artifact / anima power from world quests and whatnot, but beyond this there has been quite little available. The rewards could be anything. I'm not a developer myself, so I'm not gonna go and teach Blizzard, but for example, revamping the professions, which are embarrassing right now, and starting to put materials for crafting items, worthwhile items, deterministic rewards from your professions available in the open world, for example, could push people to actually actually spend time and enjoy their time in the open world because they know they are progressing towards that specific reward. Perhaps add an extra layer to your character power customization available in the open world. You could make something like gems or enchants, or adding reforging available through open world activities, which are all things that right now are lacking. And there is not really much of any reward available, clear goals that you can set from yourself. Many of these are very long term, which is bad because you don't see yourself progressing as much if you need 5,655 grateful offerings and every one of these quests you complete is going to give you 7. That doesn't quite feel as a deterministic reward because it's so far away that you don't even see it before the horizon. It isn't even in sight yet, which is not what pushes people to complete the content. It could be something even extremely stupid, like adding an ARPG kill streak buff on you when you're in Cortia. So the more you keep the chain going and the more enemies you can keep killing faster and faster, the higher at the end of the chain streak you will spawn a loot box giving you the rewards based on how long you were able to keep it going. Again, it's nothing, it's a tiny little thing. It's a tiny little thing that is almost guaranteed to get people to actually try to beat it because it's in the game, it gives you a reward. Why not try to do it? You are doing the chores in Cortia anyways, you might as well try it out. And this is what has been rustling my jimmies when it comes to rewards available in the game. Because if we look at what has been happening recently, if you compare the amount of times Blizzard has time-gated the content, drip-fed the progress of the content by locking it behind limiters, how many currencies you can gain each week, how much reputation you can gain each week, something being random to the point that it might take you multiple weeks to achieve everything you wanted to get from it, versus the chase rewards, the chase items you knew you could get after a certain while, meaning you had more incentive to consume the content. Look at Cortia or the Mo or even the Shards of Domination that came out in 9.1. When you look at all of these systems, you see that rather than thinking, okay, let's give our players a bunch of chase rewards, instead it looks like the idea behind the content is let's make sure they play the game. We don't trust them. We don't know if they will fall for the bait and will start chasing these rewards. What we do, we are going to we are going to manually delay the content, manually make it more tedious, more extended over time, so we know they will have to stay in the game for longer. So rather than giving you something good to do because you are excited and you know that the more you complete that content, the closer the reward you are hunting is going to come, instead they just limit it. Instead they just make it more of a slog. And then of course, and we know this as well, after the player base has gone through that slog because they are excited about the new content, so they still know that they have to go through that annoying thing if they want to experience the rest of the content, like the Mo at release or Cortia in 9.1. After a while, since the suckers who stayed in the game had to go through that slow content, they will try to bring back the players who didn't want to do that content or were disappointed and frustrated by that content by removing the shackles, removing the limiters, adding catch-up mechanisms, easier ways to get this currency or that currency, shortcuts everywhere in hopes to get people to come back. People come back so they can prepare the next patch, which is going to work in the exact same way. The new content in the next patch will be slow, limited, restricted, but players will go through it anyways because there is the hype of the patch, so to speak, and then after a few weeks, if not months, they will start again releasing the locks on the content. And yes, all of this came to me just because I looked at this Tormented hero title. I saw the chase reward available and I thought, why couldn't we have more of this? I thought optimistically that once Blizzard saw the result, so to speak, of the Mage Tower challenge, which is, a chase reward activity split for every single class, I thought that seeing the way the community reacted and engaged in the content of the Mage Tower challenge, I thought they would have seen that as a way to go forward. They were like, okay, it's clear that if we come up with some ways that have you engage in the content with a deterministic reward, because you know that if you defeat that encounter encounter, you get your reward. It's guaranteed. It's not even a boss that might or might not drop the item you want. This one is guaranteed, and it is for every single class. So you get to repeat it, you get to get people to play all of their alts, trying to level up all of their alts to get into the tower, for example. That is a good example. That was a good example of a chase reward, which is why it is a shame that since then, which was Legion, we haven't really gotten that many of these type of rewards. We have been sitting lazily since then on Keystone Master in Mythic Plus all the way up until 9.0.5, which gave us the portals for plus 20 keys. The raid is still exactly the same. You defeat the last boss, you get the title and a chance at a mount, and that is it. No more chasing, no more rewards. So that is why subconsciously I was a little bit sad when I saw the release of this title, because it evoked all of these feelings within me. I knew that this title was a good thing, that it would have given some well-deserved recognition to all of the high keys pushers, but at the same time it also made me realize that we should and we could get way more of this if Blizzard put their minds to it, because it's very, very simple. It takes literally 0 development time to add titles into the game. It takes similarly little to recolor mounts to give out as a reward, and technically even to recolor tier sets or sets in general and give them out as a reward. So it's not that we are asking Blizzard to add new zones or asking Blizzard, hey, why don't you release one raid tier every 3 months? This type of request is much more simple, much more easy to process, which is why it saddens me. It saddens me that we don't get the idea that creating very clear ways for people to identify rewards that they might want, and therefore consuming content for achieving those rewards, and we haven't really got much of it in the game. Another example is Torghast. I think Torghast was reworked over time in classic Blizzard style, from being very bad at the start to being very good right now. The problem is that there is nothing worth in Torghast. You get Soul Cinders for your legendary, which feels like a mandatory thing. It doesn't even feel like a chase reward, because it's a basic borrowed power given to every player, and you do have to keep it up to maintain your power. So it doesn't even feel like you're getting a reward. It feels like you have to do it. You are essentially pushed to do it. You're not doing it because you want to. And after that, there is barely anything. You have things like one mount in the twisting corridors. There is like 2 pets and 2 toys. It's just not enough. I was hoping for more rewards. Not because I want them, not because I need rewards to play, for example, the raid. I'm gonna do it anyways. It's just that I feel as a way to get more of the player base into and excited around the game. That's what you have to do. Otherwise, it's not really going to work. We are going to continue down this road, down this path of players getting progressively more disappointed. I will likely make a video out of this as to why precisely people are disappointed with Shadowlands, even though from Legion to now the routine has remained mostly the same in the way they try to release the content and what types of content is available to each player. There is a reason why over time people have gotten more dissatisfied, even though the content hasn't moved too far away from Mythic Plus, Raid, extra special expansion activity like the Withered training event in Legion, the Island Expeditions and Warfronts in BFA, and now Torghast in Shadowlands. There is a reason why over time this is just not enough anymore. So we will go and eventually talk about that as well. But for now, we can stop here at my entire revelation I have gotten from reading the addition of this new title, which I still approve of, but it's about 1/15 of the things I would have wanted to see added in the game as rewards. For now, we can stop here. Once again, thank you as usual for watching the video. If you enjoyed the content and want to support the channel, you can like the video, comment down below, as well as subscribe to the channel. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I just can't wrap my head around why the rewards are so bad. Don't get it.